kids. This is our last week of the series Upward. Today our lesson comes from Genesis 42, 1 through 11, and 45, 1 through 15. Joseph is finally reunited with his brothers. I have enjoyed our study about Joseph, and I hope you have too. Looking back over Joseph's life, there were so many downward moments, being sold by his brothers, living as a slave in a foreign country, going to jail for something he didn't do. But Joseph never lost his faith in God. In the end, if it had not been for those difficult times, Joseph would not have been in the right place to save the people of Egypt and his own family. Bottom line, God works all things out for our good. Stay tuned for our skit and a message from Captain Cam. See you next week.
Long ago, the world was full of wonder and food.
Don't you mean magic?
No, this is your story, not Onward. The world used to be full of food.
Oh, yes.
For several years, there was plenty of food. But now,
Yeah, we sort of hit a wall, didn't we?
the world is a much hungrier place.
Not that hungry. I was able to build some big storage barns so we'd have food here in Egypt.
Yes, the people of Egypt were grateful for all Joseph had done for them.
You're welcome, Egypt.
But in Canaan, things were looking pretty rough.
Excuse me, I'm looking for the person in charge of food. Are you the person in charge of food?
No, I'm the silky smooth movie announcer voice.
I'm the food guy. Whoa.
I'm here with my 10 brothers from our father, Jacob.
Jacob?
Please, we beg you, give us some food before we starve.
Whoa. Hey, voice girl. Do you know who this is?
Barley?
No. It's my brother. It's one of the guys who sold me into slavery.
It is.
Well. Looks like this adventure story just became a revenge story.
Revenge? Are you crazy? No way.
But he sold you into slavery.
And because of all the bad times after that, I'm here in a position to save my family.
You're talking gibberish.
It's true, all the bad times of becoming a slave, being thrown into jail, God worked things out, not just for me, but my family.
Yes, I see that. But don't you want even a teeny bit of revenge?
Not even the teeniest. I'm so grateful how God worked things out.
In a world full of food,
There's no food.
in a world filled with magic,
There's no magic.
in a world with no magic and no food, God has brought this man's life upward and to a happy conclusion.
Sir, why don't you gather your brothers and meet me in my office?
Yes, thank you, sir, thank you.
How's that for an epic ending?
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Bible lesson, and we are continuing the Upward series. This week, what I hope that we learn is that even in the bad times, God is working all things out for our good. Not just in the good times, but even in the bad times. Some of Pixar's biggest movies ended in ways we never expected. While we all saw the cheery endings of Toy Story and A Bug's Life coming, and we all cheered the superhero victories of the Incredibles movies, who would have dreamed Toy Story 3 would end with Andy giving up his toys, even Woody? And who would have even dared dream Woody would leave the other toys behind in Toy Story 4? One of Pixar's greatest endings has to be the bittersweet finale of Inside Out. Most of Inside Out takes place inside a girl named Riley, where an emotion named Joy wants Riley to always be happy. Joy does everything she can to keep Riley from feeling one of the other emotions, sadness. But Joy learns that it is through sadness we receive the greatest joy. In other words, the bad experiences of life, moving away, losing friends, broken dreams, and other losses allow us to grow. Nobody likes to go through the hard times. We think that, we would like for everything to be good all the time. But it's through those hard times that we actually, discover, characteristics about ourselves. We develop skills that we wouldn't have had to develop if times would have been good. We learn how strong that we can be. And really, it's in the hard times that we really learn, how to build our faith in God. When things are good, we don't necessarily have to rely on God as much as we should, because things are good. But when things get bad, we really have to rely on God, and He really builds our character and things like that during the hard times. The past several weeks, we've been looking at Joseph and all the things that he's been going through. He went from being this beloved son of Jacob to almost being put to death by his brothers, and then he got sold into slavery, and then he became a prisoner. But even in all of those hard times that he went through, God was constantly moving him upward. He had some down times, but he was moving him in an upward direction through all of these hard times. He finally gets to stand gets to stand in front of Pharaoh and interpret a dream for Pharaoh. And because of the way the dream turned out, Joseph ends up becoming second in command of all of Egypt. So anyway, we're going to see what happens after that. And going to go ahead and start reading in Genesis chapter 42, verse 1 through 11, and then 45, 1 through 15. And it says, "When Jacob heard that grain was available in Egypt, he said to his sons, 'Why are you standing around looking at one another? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy enough grain to keep us alive, otherwise we'll die.' So Joseph's 10 older brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob wouldn't let Joseph's younger brother Benjamin go with them, for fear some harm might come to him. So Jacob's sons arrived in Egypt along with others to buy food, for the famine was in Canaan as well. Since Joseph was governor of all Egypt and in charge of selling grain to all the people, it was to him that his brothers came. When they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized his brothers instantly, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. 'Where are you from?' he demanded. 'From the land of Canaan,' they replied. 'We have come to buy food.' Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him, and he remembered the dreams he had had about them many years before. He said to them, 'You are spies. You have come to see how vulnerable our land has become.' 'No, my lord,' they exclaimed. 'Your servants have simply come to buy food. We are all brothers, members of the same family. We are honest men, sir. We are not spies.'" So then going over to chapter 45, says, "Joseph could stand it no longer. There were many people in the room, and he said to his attendants, 'Out, all of you.' So he was alone with his brothers when he told them who he was. Then he broke down and wept. He wept so loudly the Egyptians could hear him, and word of it quickly carried to Pharaoh's palace. 'I am Joseph,' he said to his brothers. 'Is my father still alive?' But his brothers were speechless. They were stunned to realize that Joseph was standing there in front of them. 'Please come closer,' he said to them. So they came closer, and he said again, 'I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt. But don't be upset, and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. This famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years, and there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and to preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of his entire palace, and the governor of all Egypt. Now hurry back to your father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt. So come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and everything you own. I will take care of you there, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise, you, your household, and all your animals will starve. Then Joseph added, look, you can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that I am really Joseph. Go tell my father of my honored position here in Egypt. Describe him everything you have seen, and then bring my father here quickly. Weeping with joy, he embraced Benjamin, and Benjamin did the same. Then Joseph kissed each of his brothers and wept over them, and after that they began talking freely with him. While Joseph was moving upward, his family was heading downward. You know, Joseph had been through a lot of stuff, but he's finally second in command of Egypt. But his family, they were fixing to start starving. You know, if something didn't change, they were going to run out of food and start starving. So I can only imagine the emotions, you know, Joseph felt seeing the men who had plotted to kill him out of jealousy bowing before him when they came to Egypt. And it was just like the dream that he had. You know, the original dream he had showed his family bowing before him. Now, Joseph knew he was there for a reason. You know, God had worked this bad situation out for good. And sometimes it's hard for us to see it because, you know, if you went through everything Joseph went through, it would be tough. You know, your brothers wanting to kill you, being sold into slavery, having things, you know, being accused of things that you didn't do, spending years in jail, and then finally, you know, there he is standing before Pharaoh, you know, interpreting dreams. But so he went through a lot of bad things. But through all of this, God had used Joseph to save his family. You know, they were going to starve if something didn't change. But because of this long series of events, God had put Joseph in a position so that he could save his family. And not just save his family, you know, literally. You know, he actually brought his family back together too, you know, because the last time he had seen his brothers, there was no love for Joseph there. But now they were standing in front of Joseph, and things had changed, and so, you know, he brought the family back together. So if there's one thing that I hope you take away from this series, it's this: at every step along the journey, Joseph kept his faith in God. Even when he was going through the bad times, Joseph went through the bad times without losing his faith in God. He knew that there was something bigger than him that God was working out. And so he never lost his faith in God. And like I said earlier, it's easy to keep your faith in God when things are going good. But when things are going bad, it becomes a little challenging sometimes. But Joseph never stopped having faith in God. You know, he trusted that God was good. You know, God's character didn't change in Joseph's eyes, even in the bad times. God was good. He believed God had a plan for him. And, you know, it's just some ups and downs. He knew that no matter how far downward he fell, that God was actually moving him upward. You know, but it was kind of like this whole step thing. You know, it would kind of drop down and, you know, go down one and up two and down one and up two, something like that. But God made his situation turn out for the good, and in turn, he used Joseph to make his family's bad situation out to be good. Now look, when we go through tough times, you know, it can be hard to have your faith. You know, and there's people that believe that as Christians, you're never supposed to go through bad times. And that's just not the truth. We do go through rough times. We do lose loved ones. We do go through financial bad times. We do, you know, have bad relationship problems. But the difference is we trust that God's in control. You know, we look for his blessings, even when it doesn't seem like there are any blessings. We look for opportunities to be blessings to other people, even in the bad times. We remain hopeful in bad times, knowing God will ultimately, eventually, turn things for the good. So if you're going through a rough time, I want to encourage you to give that hard time to God. You know, he will give you wisdom and strength and things of that nature, but ultimately it's going to be God that brings you through the situation. You know, and ask him to strengthen your faith and to use your tough time for good. Believe in Jesus just as you did when you were baptized. You know, the day you got that baptized, the day you got saved, you know, you felt this, you know, just life just felt great. And you can keep those feelings even through the bad times, as long as you keep faith in God and just believe that he's working a plan out in your life. So if you've never given your heart to Jesus, I would invite you to either talk to me or Miss Nita or Brother Steve or some other Christian adult in your life and receive him today, because God is inviting you to live a life of adventure. You know, and in that adventure, there's going to be ups and there will definitely be downs. But through it all, God will keep you moving forward. He will give you chances to serve as he leads you onward. He will lift you upward out of those hard times and ultimately all the way to heaven. And that's the really good news, is that, you know, in this life that we live in this temporary life that we live in, there are going to be ups and downs. But if we belong to God, if we're saved, you know, if we've repented of our sins and asked Jesus Christ to be the Lord of our life, there's going to be a day where we are in heaven with God forever and ever and ever. And in heaven, there are no more downs. There's only ups. There's not going to be any more crying. There's not going to be any more pain or anything like that. So we just have to go through this temporary life that we're in right now, just trusting that God is working a plan out, and eventually we'll be in heaven with him. So y'all just keep that in mind. I hope that we did, you know, learn that, you know, even in the bad times, God is working our things out for our good. And but that's all we have for this week, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.